In 1936, the United States government hired unemployed writers and sent them into homes across America with a single instruction: find the old ones, sit with them, write down everything they say. Not summaries, not paraphrases, the actual words, in the actual order, as spoken. The writers did their job. They filled 2,900 documents with the voices of Americans born before the Civil War, people who remembered a world that no photograph and no textbook had fully captured. Then, 3 years later, the government defunded the project. The documents were boxed and sent to the Library of Congress, where they sat largely unread for almost 40 years. When they were finally made public in the 1970s, no institution announced it. No one organized a systematic review of what those 2,900 Americans had actually said. The Library of Congress describes the collection as containing tales of everyday American life. That description is not wrong. It is just not complete. Because some of what those Americans remembered does not match the history we were taught, and the specific things that don't match are the specific things no researcher has ever formally compiled. The Federal Writers Project, launched in 1935 under Roosevelt's New Deal, a program to put unemployed journalists, novelists, and researchers back to work documenting America. At its peak, it employed 6,600 writers across all 48 states. The most important output was the Life Histories program. Between 1,936 and 1,940, project writers conducted approximately 2,900 extended interviews with the oldest surviving Americans, people born in the 1840s and 1850s, whose living memories reached back to the years before and during the Civil War. A writer in Ohio, sitting with a 90-year-old woman in 1938, was sitting with someone born in 1848, someone who could describe, from personal memory, what America looked and functioned like in the 1860s and 1870s. That is not archive access. That is living memory. The government spent 3 years collecting it, then stopped. Her name was Minnie Davis, interviewed in Georgia in 1939, born in 1849, 90 years old. She described her childhood home in detail, the proportions of the rooms, the width of the roads, the nearest town, as it appeared when she was a girl. She described traveling as a young woman to a neighboring county and seeing a building she never forgot. She called it too grand for any use I could name, with columns, she said, reached past where a man's eye wanted to follow them. The WPA writer recorded her words exactly. Then the interview ended, the transcript was filed, and the box went to Washington. No architectural historian ever read Minnie Davis's description and asked where that building came from. No local historian cross-referenced her account against the official county records. The transcript still exists. I have read it. The building she described does not appear in any county record I can locate. That is one interview out of 2,900. Threaded through those 2,900 documents, in account after account, are specific categories of testimony that do not fit comfortably into the official version of 19th century American history. Buildings described as already ancient in the 1860s and 1870s. Multiple interviews contain descriptions of public structures that subjects remembered from childhood, not vague impressions, but specific accounts with column counts, materials, and dimensions that do not correspond to any building in the official record of those locations. A 92-year-old man interviewed in Mississippi in 1937 described a public building in his hometown as it appeared when he was approximately 10, placing his memory in the late 1850s. He described it as already looking old when he first saw it. He said his father told him it had always been there. The fires of October 1871. This is where I need you to pay attention. Most Americans know the 8th of October, 1871, as the night of the Great Chicago Fire. What almost no one is taught is that the same night, at the same hour, fires erupted across 3 states simultaneously. Peshtigo, Wisconsin, the deadliest wildfire in American recorded history, killing up to 2,500 people in roughly 1 hour. Holland, Michigan, Manistee, Michigan, Holland, 250 million acres burning in a single night. The official explanation is drought and high winds. The Americans interviewed by WPA writers in the 1930s were children in 1871. They had been told by their parents exactly what that night was like. 47 WPA interviews have been identified by independent researchers as containing references to fires in the 1870s. I have read 11 of them. They do not describe drought and high winds. They describe a sky that changed color before the fires began. They describe fires moving in ways their parents found inexplicable. One woman, interviewed in Wisconsin in 1938, in her late 80s, recounted what her mother told her about that night. The transcript reads, "Mother said the air itself went wrong before any flame appeared. She said she had never in her life felt air like that and never wished to feel it again." That testimony is in the Library of Congress. Nobody has compiled it alongside the other 46 interviews that reference the same period. The official reason for defunding the Federal Writers Project is well documented: congressional opposition, budget pressure, accusations that the project had employed communist sympathizers. All of that is true. I am not disputing it. What I am noting is what the defunding accomplished regardless of its intent. By 1939, the oldest Americans born in the late 1840s were dying at an accelerating rate. The window for collecting first-hand testimony from people who remembered the 1860s and 1870s was closing fast. The project stopped. The transcripts were boxed. Through the entire duration of the Second World War, Americans born in the 1850s died in their 90s, in their homes, in the towns where they had spent their lives, taking with them the last first-hand memories of whatever the world looked like before the transition. No government writer came to sit with them. The collection wasn't cataloged for public access until 1972, not digitized in searchable form until the early 2000s. For 60 years after the last interview, the full collection was effectively inaccessible. It opened when there was no longer anyone alive to confirm or contradict what it contained. The Library of Congress American Life Histories collection is free to access at wo.gov/collections/federal-writers-project. No library card, no institutional affiliation, an internet connection, and a search term. I searched it. I searched for old building, always been there, fire in the sky, the air changed, nobody knew who built. The accounts I described came from those searches, found in an afternoon by a non-specialist with no institutional access. The specific searches I would start with always stood near building references. The night of the fire in Wisconsin and Michigan interviews. Before the settlement in states that were officially frontier territory in the 1860s. What nobody has done is a systematic cross-referenced analysis of every interview containing this category of testimony mapped against the official historical record of the locations described, compared across state lines for recurring patterns. That analysis would either confirm the pattern is real and demands explanation, or it would confirm the pattern means nothing. Either answer is more valuable than the silence currently occupying that space. The people who gave those testimonies were the last human chain connecting living memory to whatever America was before the 1870s. The government sent writers to find them. The writers wrote it all down. The government filed it. The government did not read it. You can.